to day 6, we now get to Miss Cassidy Hutchinson, which is the hearing that was not scheduled initially, but was added, and you sort of knew that there was going to be something pretty sensational to come from that. Just it was really unexpected and kind of 11th hour, and the day did not disappoint. This day, offered really some of the most, I think, salacious, testimony to this point. And one thing I do want to talk about a little bit before we get into what happened and the idea of what was going to be so juicy about this day, and it didn't disappoint. It is important to remember these are committee hearings. It is not a court of law. Okay. Individuals are under oath, so there is a risk of being in contempt of Congress, and that carries with it some penalties. So that's also important to note. But the idea that people are going to get cross-examined or any of that kind of thing, that doesn't exist, or that hearsay is not something that's admissible. It's not a court of law, so that doesn't exist. Okay. So Cassidy Hutchinson, who was an aide to then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, shared some pretty eye-opening and by some accounts jaw-dropping testimony. First, she shared the story of being in the dining area where she helped a valet clean ketchup off the wall, where she alleges that President Trump had become so incensed with the Attorney General's statement that the claims of election fraud were false, that he chucked his lunch across the room and, the ketchup went across the room and was on the wall. Then there, of course, is the most contentious statement that she made regarding the limo, that once then President Trump got into the limo and was informed by the Secret Service that he would not be going to the Capitol, he became so irate that he demanded, I'm the fucking president, take me to the Capitol. And then, according to her, and this is a story she says was related to her by Tony Ornato, and that Bobby Engel was present while the story was being related, that he reached forward, grabbed for the steering wheel in the presidential SUV, and then lunged in the direction of, I believe it was the driver, as she stated, somewhere in the clavicle area. Now, what Cassidy Hutchinson also shared on this date was that when she was recounting the story and Tony Ornato and Bobby Engel were in the room, neither of them gave her any indication that her recount was incorrect or offered any separate details. Now, certainly after this came out, there were statements, that there were sources who stated that both Ornato and Engel are willing to testify under oath that these statements by Cassidy Hutchinson were not true. There was a statement put out by the Secret Service also saying, that these statements weren't true and they were willing to testify. And here's where I would like to point out that, yes, while Cassidy Hutchinson offered testimony that of a story she was told by someone else, and that would fall under a legal definition of hearsay, the same is true for these statements by sources or by the Secret Service itself, stating that Ornato and Engel were willing to testify contrary to the statement of Cassidy Hutchinson. So you really still don't have enough information based on either of those things to say 100% what she says was or wasn't true. I do find it really, really important, though, that the effort to discredit Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony focused on this one event and not perhaps the most important issue that she testified about. Early on, this wasn't really talked about. In the days that followed, it became more and more, pointed out by many more individuals that really what was most important about what she testified to was the idea that President Trump was aware that magnometers, basically metal detectors, were being used to scan the supporters who were coming into the ellipse for his speech, and that this was not allowing them to have as many people in the area, as well as making sure they didn't have any weapons, and that she says that President Trump said, get rid of the effing magnometers, let the people in. They're not here to hurt me. If they can get into the ellipse, then they can then they can march with me to the Capitol, or something to that effect, right? So basically, at the time, because the inauguration hadn't happened yet, the electoral process was going to occur, the sitting president of the United States was aware that people had weapons, and there were radio calls from law enforcement on the day of January 6th, different elements of the crowd, people in trees with weapons, people who were armed with AR-15s, 9mm, poles with sharp objects or spears at the top, all sorts of weapons, actually wanted to go with those protesters to the Capitol. Okay, if the Secret Service hadn't made the correct decision not to take the president, and their decision was based on security, as it should be, because that's their job to protect the president. Okay, we would have had the sitting president marching to the Capitol with armed supporters, trying to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. Okay, that would have been the moment. That image would have been the moment the United States went full banana republic, something that we don't expect to see in the United States of America, only in third world countries. Okay, and it's important to note, no one that pushed back on Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony pushed back on this point. Okay, that the president knew people were armed, wanted them to remove the metal detectors to allow more people in, and have those people then move from the speech on the ellipse to the Capitol, and he intended to go with them, which, by the way, don't forget, he said in his speech, we're going to the Capitol, and I'm going with you. And the Secret Service itself also issued a statement saying that, yes, President Trump wanted to go to the Capitol and became irate when he wasn't allowed to go. Okay? Now, what I really want to get to is, why does all of this matter? And I have 4 examples, and I'm going to say that they sort of escalate in importance. And so the first I'm going to start with is the Pennsylvania GOP Senate primary. And this is where David McCormick was trailing Dr. Mehmet Oz, who was the celebrity physician backed by Trump, by less than 0.1% of the vote. He was going to get a recount anyway because it was in the 0.5% margin of victory in Pennsylvania, which automatically calls for a recount. And there was an issue regarding undated mail-in ballots. The Supreme Court had previously ruled that these could be counted, and this was similar to mail-in ballot issues during the 2020 election. And if you recall, during the 2020 election, and the issue that the SCOTUS had previously ruled on, it featured Republicans who were dead set against this idea that could be these ballots could be counted. But now you have McCormick, who believes these ballots would have helped his campaign, pushing for the same thing, right? So just a few months or a year before, when it didn't serve the needs of the GOP, they were dead set against it. But now you have this issue being brought to the fore because, again, I believe this idea of election fraud and what's going on became sort of this strategy that I think is sort of the default now for the GOP. Okay, the next in the Georgia governor GOP primary, Candace Taylor, you may know her also as the Jesus Guns baby lady. She had that put on her bus, her campaign bus. She finished third, only receiving 3.4% of the vote in the GOP primary. She, of course, claimed election fraud and refused to concede. She put out a video to her supporters. In the video, she said God told her to ask her supporters to submit notarized affidavits declaring that they voted for her, to prove that they voted for her, and that she would collect enough of these affidavits to be able to demonstrate that she received enough of the vote to actually win the nomination. And that then once these affidavits were presented, that she would be then awarded the nomination. I mean, just absolutely bananas, right? But again, it's someone in the GOP believing that this claims of election fraud and some alternate form of, demonstrating that they had actually been the true victor, is something that they're going to. Next, we have the Arizona governor GOP primary debate. And I really can't do this one justice on my own. So I am going to share a video with you now.
I'd actually like to ask everybody on this stage if they would agree we had a corrupt, stolen election. Raise your hand. Did we have?
I would like to. I'm not going to play your stunt.
Why not get high-tech people that are going to be on the machines that are Republicans? A Democrat, Republican, get supervisors, equal amount.
That happens. We have parties looking over election results.
They're doing it now.
No,
they're actually telling
me. Scott, are you going to accept the results of this election if you think there's so much fraud that it can't be trusted?
Are you talking about the primary I'm currently in?
I'm talking about the primary.
The one we're in now?
Yes.
We're going to see what happens.
We're going to show up and vote in droves. They're going to have to cheat even harder in order to try to win this.
Your campaign's a psyop.
Okay, my head hurts after playing that. It just really hurts.
Yeah. What in the actual fuck, right? So for those of you who aren't watching the video and just listening, there was a question initially posed by Carrie Lake. She is the front runner in the GOP primary. She is the one who is endorsed by Trump, likely because of her support of the idea that the 2020 election was fraudulent. She is the one who posed the question. 3 of the 4 candidates in the video raised their hand, saying that there was election fraud in 2020. Karen Taylor Robson, sort of your run-of-the-mill GOP candidate, wife of a wealthy businessman, is the one who, I don't know if you quite heard it, she said, when the question of fraud came, I'm not going to play your game. She was the only one not to, affirmatively state that the 2020 election was fraudulent. Then you had Paula Tuliani Zen. She is the one who was talking about, apparently he's completely unfamiliar with how elections work, saying that you should have a Republican and a Democrat overseeing these election machines, and then basically had to be reminded by the moderator that, yes, that's what already happens. And then she said, well, yeah, but that was as a result of the fraud. And he, of course, reminds her, no, that's just the way that it's done. And then Scott Neely, of course, who wouldn't even commit to accepting the results of the GOP primary, right? Saying we still have to see how it works out. Should be noted that he's roughly polling at about 1%. He's also the one who at the end of the video refers to Carrie Lake's campaign as a psyop. So just kind of a mess, right? But what do we see? We see these continued claims of election fraud from 2020. The idea that even this process is possibly fraudulent by Scott Neely, at least, and the idea of the fraud that just exists in American elections. It should be noted too. The Heritage Foundation conducted I believe it was like a 20-year study on election fraud, and they found time and time and time again, well, yes, you do find small evidence of fraud in elections. They could not find a single instance with the information they were provided of widespread election fraud that would, overturn the results of election in any way. Then, I think the one that should be the most concerning of these 4 examples of why this stuff matters and why what I think needs to happen as a result of the January 6th committee hearings occurred in Otero County, New Mexico, often referred to as a red dot in a blue state. I think the only county in New Mexico that is conservative in the way they vote. There were 3 county commissioners who refused to certify the vote from a state primary. They were citing election fraud concerns related to some conspiracy theories regarding election machines. Have we heard that one before? I think we have, right? So this primary ballot included races at all levels, including Congress, governor, attorney general, and many local offices. The impact of this is that the races could not have been official until all counties were certified. So this one county was essentially holding up the certification of the election for the entire state, potentially disenfranchising an entire state of voters. New Mexico Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver noted, we note that the commission admitted they did not have any facts to support not certifying the election results. State Supreme Court ordered certification. 2 of the 3 commissioners complied with that order. The 3rd official, Coy Griffin, stated, and I quote, "My vote to remain a no isn't based on any evidence. It's not based on any facts. It's only based on my gut and my gut feeling and my own intuition. And that's all I need to base my vote on the elections right there." It doesn't get any more beyond the pale than that. So just go with your gut and disenfranchise voters, hold up an election, believe there's election fraud when there's no proof. And I go back to the January 6th committee hearings and what happened on that date and everything leading up to it. And what I'm really getting at is the idea that people need to be held accountable. Okay, there's been quite a bit that's come out in the committee hearings that indicates a great deal of culpability for lots of individuals. And I think we're starting to see the ball rolling in that direction, right? You have the DOJ getting a little more involved. We have the search warrants that were issued and executed on Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman. I think there's more of that to come. So oftentimes, people say these sort of committee hearings, and I, in my own head, I can go back to Iran-Contra that happened in my lifetime that, nothing ever really comes of it, right? Nobody really ever pays a real price for it. Uh, the hope has to be that this is going to be different, because you can see from these four examples, people continue to push these ideas of election fraud. And, really, really importantly, in this next turn, the Supreme Court is likely to take up a case that essentially is going to determine whether or not state courts can sort of oversee state legislatures. Basically, meaning this: if a state legislature makes the decision to throw out the popular vote in their state and award electors to another candidate, can anybody stop them? Okay, that's terrifying. If you believe in democracy at all, if you believe that your vote matters at all, that is a case that you need to be following closely. Okay, these are things that could impact everyone. Basically, we could just give the electors to whoever we want to. Okay, this is also another reminder that every election matters. Even those local elections, your state legislature, your state senate, whatever it is, they all matter.